There are some players that are not good in lane, but they are good in team fights and stuff, and I think Overpow is kinda like that. When it comes to team fight, he knows what to do.
Grand Skyfall in the mid lane!
Going on towards Mr. Rala's unstoppable force finds him. The damage is pounding down. They do manage to get 4 kills for 0.
Ro8 just melt the super hot crew.
I don't know if it's their team mentality or spirit that they trust each other and they know they can do really good in fights.
I think we have some aspects that we are good in, and the team play is one of them. I think we're very good. Like, you can't call it luck if we won 75% of the games yet, so I kinda knew that we're gonna end up in the top 3. Since now we are doing so great, everyone is so happy and just looking forward for the next matches.
Hard to really argue with a lot of those opinions. Overpow has been very impressive so far.
Yeah, I actually think Xpeke may have been a tiny bit harsh, saying that he's not super strong in lane. I feel Overpow does very well. Of late, he's not had that same impact that helped him win 75% of the games leading into these last couple of weeks.
Well, let's concentrate on the game. SK versus Ro8. Heading into this one, SK holds a 2-0 lead over Ro8 with their last victory resulting in Ro8 surrendering in the shortest game of the split.
Yeah, and in those past encounters, SK simply taken a lead during the laning phase, and they did not let Ro8 get back into the game. I want to talk about Candypan and Ro8 in particular, because they've had very strong performances when dealing with Celiva and Vanda. If you look at their stats, 7-0-7 and 2-5-12, very, very good numbers for them. SK Gaming are coming into this match having beaten Millennium in a very chaotic game. They lost to Gambit yesterday in what was a fairly one-sided match, and we'll have to see if this trend is going to continue, because I think it can definitely play on their confidence.
Yeah, going to be, you know, a bit of a struggle, or they had a bit of a struggle, really, against Millennium. They got controlled completely by Gambit, and I think the usual strong lanes for SK haven't been as dominant, and Candy Panda himself actually said he wasn't feeling in tip-top shape.
Yeah, I think against Ro8, we also need to keep our eyes on Jez's. He pulled out Zed for the first time against Alex, and it wasn't too bad individually, but it was far from being impactful in the bigger picture of the match. You know, he really didn't have a swing in towards helping them win the game.
Ro8, on the other hand, are now 1 win and 2 losses during Super Week, and it appears that Ro8's poor form is continuing. They've not really been the same since dropping those games over in Week 6, and we saw there, or we heard from Overpow, that he can bring out these new champions. We've seen him bring Mordekaiser. No one has had the balls to really do something like that up until now. Bring Mordekaiser to the big stage.
Yeah, and I'm super glad you did point that out, because, you know, in terms of their performances and in terms of Overpow pulling them out, it's working in his favor, but it hasn't worked out lately. And I think Celiva in particular is a player who's been struggling to make an impact. Vanda is still playing well in his supports, but it isn't helping Celiva get through this big slump. He's got a 2.6 KDA over the last 3 weeks. It's far from being impactful. It's not only him that's been underperforming, because the whole team has been losing in the early game, and they're going to need to strengthen this part of their game up. Luckily, with that small win-loss buffer that they have afforded themselves, there is still some time before the end of the split to solve these problems and go into playoffs looking strong.
Well, let's check out the starting lineups. On the blue side for SK Gaming is Freddy in the top lane, Svenskeren in the jungle, Jesus in the mid lane, Candy Panda the AD carry, and then Ro8 the support.
And on the red side, it is Ro8. Zazus up top, Jankos in the jungle, Overpow, the man we just heard from, in the mid lane, Celiva on AD carry, and Vanda playing support.
And our featured matchup of the day is between Ro8 and Vanda. Both supports have been instrumental in their team successes. Vanda secured MVP in Week 4, and then Ro8 helped Candy Panda earn his own MVP just a week before that.
Yeah, if you compare their stats, Vanda has the second highest KDA for all supports in the European LCS at 4.23, and then Ro8 is in third at 3.32. Their kill participation is very similar, hovering around that 70% mark. The most interesting thing between these two players is their number of champions played. And Ro8 has currently played 7 unique champions and has shown an ability to have a positive impact on many of them, specializing in those hard engages. Whereas Vanda, he likes Thresh. He really likes Thresh. He's played 10 games out of the 18, and he generally plays Morgana as a backup, having played that in 5 more games. So Vanda, I feel his champion pool is a little more limited.
So with that in mind then, can we expect a Thresh ban here out of SK?
I definitely think it's a possibility. Let's go with yes, instead of trying to hover on the fence. I also think that for this game in particular, the AD carries and supports are more likely to be banned. I feel like you can remove some of those priority mid lane bans like a Kassadin. Jesus already won games on them in the past. We've also seen jungler bans like Pantheon and Wukong. But because Jankos and Svenskeren are so effective on other champions, I think for both of these teams, it's more effective to go in that duo lane.
And actually, both games, Caitlyn has been banned out by SK Gaming here. We theorized that they wanted to get into that vein of champion that Candy Panda has excelled so very well at. We'll see if that actually happens around from this one. But I want to touch on the mid laners because you've already talked a lot about Overpower and heard from Overpower himself. Let's talk about Jesus here because he himself, you know, last few games, Zed, which wasn't massively impactful, but was by no means
it wasn't
a bad
terrible.
Zed.
No, it definitely wasn't. I think Jesus on Zed actually played fairly well. He held even in his lane. He was putting some pressure onto Alex very early on. Alex was playing LeBlanc, which is somewhat of a counter to Zed. You know, got the silence that we can deal with Zed and all of his shadows. And he did pretty well in the matchup. He roamed very effectively, which is something that when Jesus is doing, he's helping SK win. For this matchup, I feel like he may go back to the slightly more comfort farm type champions because SK are not doing particularly well this Super Week. They're 1-1. They've got this game now. They play another game later today. And I feel like if they go back to comfort, maybe it can help them secure a win.
And while we're talking about, you know, the comparisons of these two teams, Svenskeren and Jankos, two junglers who have been so aggressive. We've seen Svenskeren making huge plays for SK Gaming. He's been there, I think, their guider almost. If Svenskeren does well, SK Gaming follow.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And the most important thing for me, if you compare Svenskeren this split to last year, is he's having that positive impact on a range of different champions. Svenskeren was very hit and miss last year. He wasn't always to deliver the goods. This time around, they take away one champion, he just does it on another one.
Well, we'll see if and what is taken away from Svenskeren this time around. Actually, we are going to see the first ban being Trundle there against Xaxus in the top lane. There's the Caitlyn ban as well. So actually, up until now, following the bans here, SK from their last encounter, the last one last time was Kassadin. Ro8 have banned out Pantheon and Renekton.
So Elise is still up, and I also wonder now if SK are going to force Ro8 to either ban a Vayne or consider it. I mean, Kassadin's still available, they have to get rid of it. Yeah. So Vayne is up. If SK sees the opportunity, they could go for it. They could also first pick a Thresher. There's a number of possibilities for both of these teams.
Lulu left open in this one, and they beat Millennium with Jesus on Lulu in that mid lane. 8-2-8, he finished with that one. I don't really see it that much as a Freddy champion in top lane like we've seen for Fnatic with Soaz taking that one. So pretty sure that will be Jesus in the mid lane. Over on the other side though, Aatrox coming out for Xaxus and a Lucian pickup for Celiva.
So Celiva's going to get the AD carry that he's played an immense amount over the course of the split. 6 games played, 4 of those are victories. So he's going to be in a comfort pick. What I like about this pick and ban phase from Ro8 is they banned away Renekton, which is Freddy's most played champion at 8 games. They also took away his Aatrox, who he has played phenomenally with in the games leading up to this. And because SK banned out Trundle, it means Freddy's going to have to default to either a new champion or maybe pick up the likes of a Shyvana, which he has also played a multitude of times.
What are SK going to add into this one? Looks like we will be seeing Sivir, and if that Kayle is locked in, which it will be, that will go over to N-Rated. We saw them playing the Kayle support actually against Alliance. N-Rated ended that game 0-0-13.
So if you look at that previous game where Gambit were running Kayle, he's not going to have the same damage that Kayle's putting up, but because the ultimate no longer has a mana cost, it's going to allow SK to really have a strong start. In addition to the intervention, they've got Wild Growth. So if anybody is at risk of dying, you're going to prevent all that damage. Oh look, they're going to die again, you're going to Wild Growth them. There's a lot of I save my carry available for SK, and when you consider they're quite focused on getting Candy Panda fed and ahead, that's a good save your AD carry composition so far.
What are Ro8 going to add into this one then? Wukong is a champion that they have visited a couple of times in here actually, and by a couple I actually mean just once. That was against the Super Hot Crew in their loss a little bit earlier on last week actually, where they finished 2-5-6 was Jankos on that one, and taking Thresh. What a massive surprise. Vander on Thresh.
Now, who would have guessed that one? That should be the 11th time that he's now playing Thresh this split. He's got a very good record with it, and I think, if I'm going to be very honest, in the last couple of games, Vander's not been able to get his AD carry kills, and he's going to need to make sure he lands some very impactful hooks against the Sivir and Kayle lane early on, because once they get their ultimates, it's going to be much more difficult for Lucian and Thresh to actually kill and stick to Sivir and Kayle.
Final 2 picks here coming out for SK Gaming were Evelyn for the jungle. Of course, played it in their loss against Gambit just yesterday, where Svenskeren went 3-6-2, but also, importantly, maybe even more, against Alliance, where they picked up that great win last week. And then Jax in the top lane for Freddy122.
So the Jax versus Aatrox is a matchup that we've seen. I think we've seen it yesterday, if I recall correctly. In the early levels, Jax is going to have some difficulty dealing with that Aatrox. He needs to get some items up. The one thing that I like about SK's composition is they've got damage threats from 4 of their champions and even their jungler. Evelyn tends to build a lot of damage herself. So as Sivir's damage and sort of raw output of damage falls off in the super late game, Evelyn and Jax is going to scale up. Kale's even going to potentially become a bit of a threat depending on how Enrated builds him. So SK have got good peak power points at multiple stages during the course of the game.
And final pick in here for Ro8 was Ziggs, a champion which has been both very, very good for Overpower. The 6-0-4 scoreline against Gambit in their win comes to mind, and also hardly having an impact against the Wolves, 0-1-2. Not the performance that Overpower will be looking for here today. And he's obviously going to be up against Jesus' Lulu in that mid lane. And Overpower, he's got to perform today.
So this is a matchup that, as you said, we've seen a couple times before, and Overpower in the very early levels will have a little bit of an advantage over Lulu. Lulu needs to get basically level 3, have access to all of her abilities, that then she can start bullying and poking Ziggs down. But because of Ziggs' immense range, he actually has tools to deal with her. Farm from safely back. It's a matchup where you can get away a little less punished than you would if you were playing other champions. You know, a champion like Kayle needs to get in close range and farm. Ziggs, you can sit a little further back. The one thing that I like about Ro8's composition is they've got tools to control waves. And if they can get themselves into a split push, letting Xazus go with that Aatrox, assuming he can get ahead a little bit early, I think they can have some good map control.
Well, guys, with the champions now selected, let's see who you pick to win on LOLesports.com. According to the numbers, 59% of you are behind Ro8. Very, very close, though.
Both of these teams have been struggling this week. I think SK still looked very good coming into Super Week. They have faltered somewhat in their games. Ro8, however, they've had back-to-back weeks where you've sort of gone, this isn't the team we're used to seeing. And I think this is going to be a big confidence boost for whichever team picks up the victory.
Let's not forget as well that SK Gaming seem to be Ro8's kryptonite. They haven't beaten them up until now. We're going to find out if they can this time around, though. SK Gaming versus Ro8 as we jump into game and see how this one all unfolds and see if Ro8 can do the business over SK for the first time in the season.
Well, time is now. They're 1-2 on Super Week. This is Ro8's last game of Week 8. SK Gaming still have one more later today. And the confidence boost that it would give them would be immensely useful. I think for SK, if you look at their team comp, once again, we've got a lot of mobility. Sivir, Lulu, Eve, you know, she throws on a W. She's going to be chasing everybody around. If Ro8 are unable to get some poke from Ziggs onto SK, I feel like their 5v5 power is going to be overall lower than that of SK. Yes, you've got great combination of Aatrox and Wukong, but Ziggs doesn't necessarily fit that. Even if you've got Thresh throwing himself into SK, you know, Lucian, there's a lot of risk of Lucian just being run down. So I think there's a lot of onus and a lot of pressure on Ro8 to get poke before a good team fight.
So level 1 stacking up pretty standard. All things considered, waiting for those wards to become available. The only difference that we see is actually the sweeping lens for Overpower in the mid lane. We know that he likes to build his Ziggs a little bit different to others.
Yes, he does. He's actually built the Spirit of the Spectral Wraith in 2 of his previous Ziggs games. Earns him a lot of gold because he allows that passive just to, max out. And then he kills a wolf camp every minute or 2 minutes and just get maximum gold efficiency from that item. The fact that he's got the sweeping lens, I think, is to deal with the Evelyn a little bit more. Deny some of the vision that SK are going to be putting down, and potentially just trying to play a little bit of a control game against this Eve, because the psychological pressure that Evelyn puts on a team is very, very difficult.
That is that mid lane. Ziggs versus Lulu, and the junglers get things underway with Svenskeren doing his blue buff, Jankos doing the red buff on his top side of the jungle, and then they'll just switch things over. That bottom lane, of course, this time around is Sivir Kayle versus Lucian Thresh.
So Lucian Thresh is the standard LCS lane. It's the #1 and #2 most picked champions here in Europe. You look at Candy Panda and Enrated, they're playing now a unique pick. This is the second time we've seen the Kayle, and I think the poke that can come down from Candy Panda and Enrated is good enough to keep Celevan and Vander at bay, as long as Candy Panda and Enrated stay, grouped, as long as they focus the right target. You've also got to remember, Enrated's got a heal in that lane. So it is sustained versus non-sustained, meaning Celevan and Vander need to press any advantage they gain, otherwise it's just going to be wiped out thanks to Kayle's healing powers in a little bit of time.
Saw the junglers there for a brief moment, moving on to the bottom side of the map, and see if they go for anything at level 3 with those double buffs on. See where they'll be actually pressuring. Mid lane, hard to really lock down with that speed out of Lulu and the ability to jump off the satchel charge from Overpower on Ziggs. We'll see where that focus comes in. I'm expecting Jankos here, to just say, okay, lanes are pretty good here at the start for us. I'm going to farm up, get to 6 as fast as I can.
I think both of the junglers have to do that. Because of the fact that both Wukong and Evelynn are very lackluster in their ganks before having their ultimates available, means that we're most likely going to see it, unless the team gets very overextended. I also think if I were Jankos, I would probably want to get the Ziggs or the Aatrox a little bit ahead. They've got tools that they can deal with their opponent in a 1v1 scenario, so if they can get an early advantage, it can work out for them. Xaxus, he's got his Dark Flight, he's got Flash, he's very overextended, but he's got so many tools to get away if Sven were to come in.
And is actually going to be recalling from this one. You can never be too careful when there's an Evelynn on the other side of the team. And as such, he will just be recalling straight out from that one. Coming back in with Doran's Blade added to the Doran Shield. So pretty similar to what a lot of these top laners have actually been going for. Earlier kind of trio of Dorans to keep the lane stage strong.
Yeah, we see the first pink ward's gone down just above Jankos' current position. And what I like about a pink ward like this, especially in the very early game, is it's quite difficult and quite risky to go in and take that down at this stage. Sven really has to commit to a counter gank to find the ward and to move around. So Ro8 are going to have this vision of that entrance for quite a while, quite a long time. And the efficiency and that information that you buy for the cost of the ward is very, very good. We'll keep an eye on how long it lasts. There is also a pink ward in Xaxus' hands. I think if Xaxus is going to push the wave out, he'll probably put that pink ward down in the river and just give him that extra forewarning of knowing when Sven Scaren's coming up.
Moving into that one, are they going to spot him? They're not at this point. This could be a little bit dangerous for Freddy. There is the decoy in, and it's going to all of a sudden pop up. Freddy going to go pretty low, will leap strike away. There's the Dark Flight in. Freddy has to flash.
Very well played there. Freddy was overextended. Jankos comes in and he punishes him. I think the fact that Freddy saved his flash until the knockup was available was the right thing to do. Was able to leap to a minion, then flash away from the knockup, but flash is down. So if Freddy pushes that wave out once again, then Jankos can just rinse and repeat. You've got that slow from Aatrox, you've got the knockup as well, if he can land it. And there's the heals we were talking about. I think Candy Panda and Ro8 have already got some control of this lane, thanks to the very long range on that Boomerang Blade, and the fact that any damage that's been taken by Celevan Vander has been healed up. They've still got their potions available. So that's how well they're playing this lane. All of that sustain and that sticking power is still available to them.
Yeah, actually Candy Panda running low on mana here. He's had plenty of time to be throwing out that Boomerang Blade over towards Celevan. Actually, they're starting to back away. Evelynn's just to the top side there by the Wraiths, just to get vision down, though, to make sure that Ro8 don't try anything sneaky in the early stages.
Yeah, and we talked about how the pink wards are going to be very important for Ro8. Exactly like we said, Xaxus, he's pushed the wave up, he's got that pink ward in the river. What I like about the placements is that Xaxus cannot get ganked from behind, because if Evelynn walks through the bottom river entrance by the Wraith camp, it's going to get spotted by that pink ward, and the ward that he's got in the river, it's going to allow Xaxus to extend quite deeply and try to punish Freddy. Sven is level 6, so it's kind of soft CC. The slow from Kayle and the slow from Eve, they would really have to hit hard on Celevan to kill him. Doesn't look like they're going to go for any sort of game.
No, Sven's just going to recall from that one. Pick up a couple of items and get back into his jungle path. In the top lane, we did see Freddy actually picking up a Vamp Scepter as his first item. Of course, moving up to that Blade of the Ruined King, but probably more importantly to give him that extra bit of sustain in this lane. He does have a slight CS lead over that of Xaxus at this point.
Yeah, Xaxus right now, we haven't really seen both of these top laners trading or fighting at all. Xaxus just defending his pink ward. Basically just farm lane. Freddy with some good poke, but I want to see how this is going to work out. Sven, again, this would have to be a tower dive, but you can see Jesus is roaming top lane. This is something that Jesus is doing more and more in the recent weeks. And there is a tower dive potential, but again, it can go horribly wrong. We've seen Aatroxes revive, get kills themselves.
Yes, Gambit comes to mind when you think about that one. Zazas there has Svenskeren in the lane with him, but really how much of a problem will it be? Freddy is going to clear out that pink ward, give Svenskeren a little bit more breathing room, but because of that, it's kind of obvious. And Jankos has moved up now onto this top lane, and they've spotted Jankos coming through, so they know exactly where each other are. Svenskeren just trying to keep out of range of Jankos, and they do a little bit of a dance around. That blue buff is respawning in, so they don't want to leave that up too late and give it over to Jesus.
Yeah, I think that was the smart decision from SK not to pick a fight. You've also got to remember that if Overpower was able to move a little bit further north, he could have thrown down his Mega Inferno Bomb to get some additional damage and help out the rest of his teammates. So at the end of the day, SK play that one a little bit safe. They back away. If you look in the bottom lane, we'll see that Candy Panda and Ro8D have been stuck to that tower for quite a while. They've been shoving it up. You can see it on the mini-map, and they're getting some pretty good damage down on it right now.
Got a good CS lead as well. Does Candy Panda in that lane not being home, as he said, to buy just yet. They've just been sticking to that turret as Jesus is going to say, look, that's a pink ward. So the one that was put down after just a couple of minutes is finally going to be removed from the game, and that will give Svenskeren a bit more room to play with.
So the thing that's nice about that is if you look at it, I think the pink ward lasted around about, call it 5.5, 6 minutes-ish. All of that knowledge, all of that time frame, it allowed Zazas to stay overextended. Now that there's no more vision, Zazas cannot play that risky. He has to be a little bit safer, has to play a little bit more defensively. He's still behind a tiny bit of CS against Jax, and that lane's been even. They've caught bandaged a little bit.
Good damage in there, but nothing really to lock it down. And that's the thing about Kayle, that you're gonna have a slow in there, but you're not really gonna have a full lockup like the Annie or the Thresh will.
And at this point in time, because Candy Panda and Ro8D have kept Saliva and Vanda in the lane for the full 10 minutes, they're finally backing off to spend some money. Saliva is a little bit down on CS. If Saliva and Vanda had given up to the pressure earlier on, they would have lost their tower. You know, Candy Panda and Ro8D have been sticking to it, and when Ro8D puts down his Righteous Fury, he can push away quickly, he can also get in the tower. Jankos has Cyclone, he has Flash, they're going on Freddy.
Decoy comes in, there's a surprise once again, the knock-up from Zazas. Freddy surely going down from this, he puts the counter-strike in, but he's not got a Flash, he falls, and that is first blood. And look at his Flash cooldown, he's just coming off there. Unlucky for him, but Svenskeren trying to turn things around. This is some good damage onto both of them. Jankos is low, Zazas of course does have that blood well. Svenskeren decides not to follow on.
That was very good play from Jankos and Zazas. They came in on Freddy, and as soon as they got the second knock-up down, Freddy started to channel that counter-strike, and Zazas and Jankos both peeled away. They stepped out of range of that stun, and then came right back in, closing out the kill. So, first blood secured for Ro8D, lands in the hands of Jankos on a jungler that you want to get a lead with. You want to build some items a little early on, and we'll see how Jankos actually spends his money.
Talking about that sustain earlier on with Ro8D's heal is now a little bit harder for Ro8D to deal with. We've got a Vamp Scepter now picked up from Candy Panda on top of that BF sword that both AD carries are currently carrying. So we'll see how that makes an impact on this lane. It's currently a 20 CS lead for Candy Panda. You can see that the damage is a little bit hard to handle for Seller, and he's got no way of regenerating it other than that potion.
Yeah, at this point in time, Candy Panda and Ro8D are in complete control of the lane. I think the duo is stronger. It's got long-range poke, you've got a sustain lane, and you've also got, you know, the slow that can come down from Ro8D. So if Lucian does get in range, and he uses his Relentless Pursuit, that is when Ro8D wants to throw the Q down. He hasn't actually skilled it just yet, so not even needing it to win out the lane. It's just purely Candy Panda and Ro8D outplaying Saliva and Vanda, who have been struggling lately.
Yeah. Almost the opposite story as well for SK. Candy Panda and Ro8D have been so very good recently. This mid lane been fairly quiet, to be honest. The jungler's not really been near it. We've seen both of them picking up an Athene's Unholy Grail. The only real difference between the two builds right now is that the Boots of Speed have been picked up by Jesus, and Overpower shouldn't be too far behind on that front either. Top lane, we did see Jax actually picking up a Phage in there finally on top of that Vampiric Scepter, and the push up towards the Cutlass has already been completed by Zazas.
So at this point in time, SK Gaming are being given all the time they need to farm themselves up. Jesus is a player that likes to farm. He likes to get his items completed. He likes to get to a comfortable itemization point before fighting. And because Ro8 are playing very defensively across most of this map, it's just giving SK's, Jax and Evelyn and Lulu the time to get the key items. You see Sven is sniffing around this Xaxus in the top lane, but it's very difficult. The wave is pushing against him.
And they importantly saw that pink ward, so Svenskeren knows where not to go here if he wants to keep his position hidden. Actually, he's starting to make his way over towards that red buff, and Jankos takes it. That was almost too close. If Evelyn would have been on that corner, he would have lost that red buff to Sven. 3
members of SK moved in to try and steal that buff away. You notice that Svenskeren was hiding just out of sight in the red buff. Freddy immediately came down through the tri-bush. So if a fight had broken out, SK were in a position to react. I think with the Dragon not even being considered yet for either of these teams, the next time a jungler shows his face in the top lane is when a Dragon could get started.
Good damage once again by Freddy up there. We're going to see the blue buff being given over to Xaxus once again. He's only 5 CS in the lead, but staying level at the moment with overpower. This bottom lane is where the real discrepancy is, of course. 130 to 107 CS in favor of Candy Panda. It's been nothing but pressure in that bot lane.
Nothing at all. I wonder if Candy Panda and Ro8 have decided not to go for the tower kill, though. I think we'll keep our eyes on this lane just a little bit in these next couple of minutes, because Candy Panda and Ro8, in my mind, have got better wave pushing power than Celevan Vander have to deal with it. So you see Candy Panda, he's moving, he's actually not trying to get in range of the tower. Yes, Thresh was zoning him, of course, but I think buying time just to keep farming up, get more powerful, get stronger, and then use their superior team fighting power is what SK are looking for. And in my opinion, they're setting themselves up very well for a strong mid-game showing.
And Svenskeren is now moving in, and the one thing about having that tower there is a almost false sense of security for that duo lane. They have managed to land the hook on towards Enrated. Wukong's there, the box goes down. Svenskeren going to say hello any second, but Enrated caught out. He uses the intervention on himself. Jankos has gone very low. He's inside the brush and won't escape. Svenskeren picks up the kill.
The power of intervention, allowing SK to pick up their first kill. Enrated was so patient with that. He didn't waste it immediately, waited for his life to go low, popped it when all of the focus was still on him. Ro8 invested so much on trying to kill Enrated that by the time intervention came down, there was nothing left to carry on in the fight. Vander's being pushed away. We do see that Xaxus also caught out overpower. This is an uncontested Dragon for SK.
Yeah, Mega Inferno Bomb is the only thing to go in. Svenskeren actually took low from that one, but in the end only really helps them finish off the Dragon kill. First one of the game going over to SK Gaming, and therefore they have a gold lead. 1,400 or so gold is the lead that they're sat on.
Yeah, at this point, it's exactly what SK wanted to do. They were happy playing it passive, they were happy playing it slow. They've got champions that need some items first. Sivir, you want to get us some itemization, and you want it grouped, really. You want Sivir with a couple of other members to get even more value out of that on the hunt. And thanks to this 2,000 gold lead and the Dragon control, I wonder if this might be the go signal to start going for the towers, allowing SK to maybe push their bottom tower down and then start rotating. They can go for some very fast tower pushes thanks to having the Sivir and Lulu that's working her way towards this Lich Bane as well.
Diving Jax, never a good idea in my opinion, but we'll see how it works out for them because they are going to go for it. Xaxus tanking up all the damage. Freddy, I think he's going to fall. Jankos will finish him off, but Svenskeren there, he's got a red buff on. That's dangerous. That's bad news to Jankos. Good flash. Svenskeren gets it anyway. He's going to get the blood well out of Xaxus. Has he got the damage to finish off the kill straight away afterwards? Those hate spikes coming in, and it will be a double. Svenskeren once again in the right place at the right time.
Brilliant play. Svenskeren was able to respond. Unfortunately, Freddy gave up the death, but it allowed Svenskeren to grab 2 more kills. There's no pressure on the tower. And Jankos and Xaxus, they're trying to make it happen. Jankos is trying to help Xaxus out. It's just not working right now.
Damage into that bottom lane. Actually, Candy Panda, I think, took larger of that damage. There's a culling being used by Celevan just to try and force them away from the turret. Candy Panda still sat on that 30 CS lead. Both AD carries now with a Bloodthirster in hand. See the Berserker Groove's a real difference between them at this point. Well, there we see SK again just push them straight back onto the tower. The tower which is so very low. We are going to see Xaxus coming around the side. Celevan's in trouble here. There's the damage coming out. The turret goes down. Celevan's not escaping, and it will in fact be Xaxus that gets the kill.
So I got the roam direction backwards. I thought Candy Panda was going to go mid after the tower. It turns out Xaxus was coming bottom to get the tower. SK once again using the power of their team fights, the mobility mobility and the speed in conjunction with the early game lane win that they've got. Now Overpower's in a little bit of trouble.
Oh, Jesus actually, that is a great satchel charge. Jankos goes in, Jesus flashes away, Overpower is going to go low. Svenskund doesn't have the mana to really chase in for this one. There's the Mega Inferno bomb. Can't finish off though. 3 men low in mid, crazy fight again.
The rest of SK are going to set their sights on this tower. We did see Freddy coming from the top lane, and we'll see if Svenskund